And your number
before we hop to the number one, I want to touch on my number two a little bit more.
Okay.
What I really did enjoy about WandaVision 2 was just some of the side characters that we got to see. Just their storylines develop. I mean, for one, we got to see Wanda's kids.
Billy and Tommy, and we know they're coming back.
And we see all sprinkled throughout pretty much all these Disney Plus shows, little nods to other young Avengers and characters coming up.
Yeah.
The one thing that I thought we were going to see, because it kind of felt like it was setting up, was a little House of M, maybe a little Mephisto.
Marvel plays the long game.
It does play the long game.
Right? So, there was a lot of people out there who was very upset.
I wasn't upset. I just was like, man, this is really setting up to be House of M, right?
House of M, right? And we thought we were going to get Mephisto in WandaVision. We didn't. But here's the question. Did we not, though? We could have.
We could have.
He could be right in the mix, and we just don't know.
This is true. Because a lot of people thought Agatha was Mephisto, right? Like, that kind of made it, like, the obvious one.
Or that she's working for Mephisto.
Or working for, right? So, I thought that was fantastic. And to your point, too, just to see the Darkhold come back into play. Because it was done in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. It was done really well in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. I thought that season of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. was phenomenal. It was probably one of the best ones. But to see it done to this degree and to see it come back up and become MCU canon, and that scene we see her just...
It's way more darker, too.
Yeah, and now...
Like, the way the Darkhold really is.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And now we see her sitting there just studying in her little cabin.
And showing just how truly powerful she is. Because people like Doctor Strange, when they astral project, their body have to be at rest.
Right.
She's walking around sipping coffee or tea or whatever.
Doing her thing, right?
In the mountains, and while she, her astral projection is just sitting there, wheeling stuff and studying the books.
So do you think, because this is something I'm personally speculating, at that point, do you think where she's got the Darkhold and she is officially... Well, she hears her kids, but... she officially becomes the Scarlet Witch, that's a Nexus level event in itself.
Yeah.
And that is a branch in itself, because at that point...
I'm going to point something out which I don't know if you know.
Okay, go ahead.
So I actually sat the episode of Loki and WandaVision side by side.
Okay.
And ran them together.
Okay.
And the moment that she embraces everything and she harnesses her true power and takes everything from Agatha, is at that moment that Immortus, he's talking and he stops and he's like, now I don't know the potential of what's going to happen for me to write it now. Something have just changed. This is right before Sylvie and Loki gets into the fight.
Now that is interesting. I have not seen that.
And Wanda is a Nexus being.
Exactly.
Right? Immortus, a.k.a. Kang the Conqueror, is the Nexus being. As a matter of fact, the city that he houses his stuff is in something Acropolis. What is it called? Oh my gosh, I cannot remember what the name of the Acropolis is, but it's the micro city that's in the Nexus realm where time doesn't coincide with the time around us. So if he is a Nexus being that could pass through this Nexus point and can create a city and dwell there, right? So the moment that Wanda embraces herself and becomes that true Nexus being, everything shifts.
Okay.
Right? So I believe it's in that moment that all of that, like, he literally, like, realizes that just happened. Because remember, Immortus is he who remains.
Right. And at that point, he can't see what's going to happen next anymore.
Nope. And he then now does what he does to get Loki and Sylvie at each other's necks. And they fight, and boom, she kills him.
And do we give the viewers a little spoiler in that Scarlet Witch and Steven are no longer on the same level there?
Oh, they are very much no longer on the same level.
Because I don't think people understand the level where Scarlet Witch is now in comparison to what they've seen.
Even these new fans who have watched WandaVision and love WandaVision, and oh man, Scarlet Witch, blah, 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 they still haven't seen her cut up yet.
Mm-mm.
They still have not. And I believe in Multiverse of Madness, we will see her cut up.
Mm-hmm.
I would not be surprised if Multiverse of Madness ends, one, with her having her 2 kids. 2, we now have mutants. Because I believe we're going to get to see a reverse House of M scenario, but reverse.
Okay.
Right? Where she probably might utter these words or whatever and speak it into existence and poof. It's now there. But I honestly, truly do not believe that the general audience have any idea of how strong the Scarlet Witch truly is.
Yeah.
And I believe we're going to see that.
So, I just had to touch a couple notes on that because that show, like I said, it
was amazing.
It was absolutely amazing.
It was amazing.
And to see how many people were so frustrated by it kind of, like, looking back at it, just makes me laugh because
we also got the introduction of Monica Rambeau.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? And people started putting 2 and 2 together and realized, oh, hey, that's the little girl from Captain Marvel.
Mm-hmm.
In the comics, Monica Rambeau is the first Miss Marvel.
Mm-hmm.
And then Carol Danvers comes way later.
Yep.
I believe in the Marvels, we're going to get all of them. I believe we're going to get Carol Danvers, a.k.a. Captain Marvel. We're going to have Monica Rambeau, a.k.a. the original Captain Marvel, Miss Marvel, and Photon.
Photon, yeah.
And I believe she's going to take her mom's name, because her mom's name in the MCU, her call sign was Photon.
Mm-hmm. Which we saw a glimpse of her power, which how awesome was that?
Which
scene?
I didn't really, that was one of the things that I hated about Captain Marvel. Her call sign on the plane was, on the jet, was Avenger, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Her call sign is Warbird.
Right. Yeah. You know, you can't have it all.
You can't. You can't.
That's a whole different episode I'll have to make, because I know you did not like that film. And you did not like her. Are we still not on Team Brie yet?
We're not. Listen, and again, she's an amazing actress. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to blame the director.
I feel like...
Or the writer.
I feel like she's going to be redeemed coming up here.
Maybe. And I hope that she is. Just because of the way that they executed the character.
Yeah.
She just seemed extremely flat to me.
Yeah.
Right? Where she was one of, like, the first females out of the Marvel universe when I was reading comics that I just gravitated to.
Fair enough. Yeah.
You know? I mean, first of all, there's the love of my life, Aurora Monroe.
Yeah.
Right?
As we know. Yeah.
As we know.
Yeah.
And then Miss Marvel, you know, and she was just, this is back before Rogue got a hold of her, when she was just kicking butt.
Yeah.
You know, but then, Brie just, she haven't won me over yet.
Okay.
Yeah.
Little side note there.
And then we got to our number 1.
Moon Knight. No, I'm sorry, I had to drop that. I had to. You know I had to.
I know. Which is okay, right?
Because you know, once it does air, it's probably going to be my number 1.
It's probably going to be your number 1.
I just, you know, a little biased, but at the same time.
So far, my number 1 have a little bit of Wakanda in there, so I'm okay.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm okay with that.
And it has a little cap for me.
Has a little bit of cap.
It makes sense. It makes sense.
I gave Falcon and Winter Soldier number 1 because of a array of just beautiful execution, right?
Agreed.
And we get to see the show starts, but we get a flashback of Endgame when Cap gives Sam the shield, right? And he tells him, he's like, it's yours. And when Cap says it's yours, there was something that Cap saw, right? Which was greatness in Sam, right? And the ability, the true ability for him to become the next Captain America. Sam hadn't seen that yet. Sam felt like the shield belonged to someone else.
Yep.
So he's like, because I feel like only Steve was worthy of this, I'm going to give this up to the museum so they can put it up as a symbol of what Steve's legacy was. Because I'm not worthy of that, right? We got to see the government now take that and give it to their poster child, right? For him to abuse it, misuse it, misrepresent what it stood for, right? Watch Sam fight for it back along with Steve's first best friend.
Yep.
Because they cannot have Steve's legacy be defamed the way that it was. So you watch Sam go on this journey, right, of self-recognition and realize, I am not going to let my boy's legacy be tarnished. And I am going to do whatever it is that I need to do and rise, stand and rise to that place where I need to be, right? And we watch him go through the journey, right? Talking to Carly Morgenthau and saying, there got to be another way. You shouldn't be doing it like this. Mm-hmm. Your fight is not unjust. It's righteous, mm-hmm. right? But your methods is wrong. And her being driven by the way that they were dealt with from the blip back, right? And the way how the government treated them. Mm-hmm. And it's not when Sam gets, in the end, when he gets the suit and he flies through the window and the guy's like, who is you? And he's like, I'm Captain America. It's not that moment that he's Captain America, but it's the moment in the end of the series, right? When he saves the government mm-hmm. and the people that matter. He mm-hmm. saved the day.
The dignitaries.
Right?
Yeah.
And then he confronts them and tell them, listen, man, you're doing it wrong. Mm-hmm. Do better. In the moment of him facing off with the world government, he checks the world government after saving them mm-hmm. and saying, you are doing this wrong. And they were like, well, how would you know? He was like, you don't... And it's the way that he peels off his layers, right? And keep in mind, you can't tell a true Captain America story without telling the past. And not just the past, but the hidden past, mm-hmm. right? So if you're going to tell the story of a black Captain America, there was a black Captain America before.
Yep.
So now you have to reveal his story. And even though you didn't have enough time to see his story, you heard his story.
Yep.
Right? So you got the image set into your brain. And while you are seeing past Captain America, past black Captain America, mm-hmm. new black Captain America, there's still a future Captain America symbol that's showcased in the very same show.
Yep.
And we got to see Eli looking at what his grandfather been through,
yep.
right? Listening to what Sam is saying, mm-hmm. that's resonating with his grandfather, that's almost bringing him to tears,
yep.
to look and be like, I think I'm going to follow in my grandfather's footsteps.
Yep.
So you see a foresight of this new potential hero.
Mm-hmm.
And all these things that's weaved in there is what I thought it was just sheer genius.
Yep, I agree. And I think what was beautiful about it was the fact that the entire time he kept trying to see how he can live up to Steve, where it wasn't even that... It was this struggle for him, like, I'm never going to be Steve, where in the end, he wasn't needing to be Steve. He needed to be Captain America.
Yeah.
And that, to me, was what resonated the most with me, where it was his origin story as his own Captain America. Yeah. And that was so beautiful.
And that's why Steve was telling him, it's yours.
Right. And that, I think, was missed by a lot of people, too, because... Remember all the frustration when the shield was handed off to the fake Captain America, and how many fans were so infuriated, and just all the comic book fans were just like, please just wait. Just
wait.
Just hold on.
This is supposed to happen.
This is supposed to happen, and he's playing this character so well as U.S. Agent. Like, you don't even understand, like, the acting and the actor is playing U.S. Agent so well that you're viscerally angry and sending death threats to an actor
who's just doing his job.
Who's doing his job so well that you're now mad.
Yeah.
And to see what's funny is that origin story. To your point, there were so many Captain America origin stories being told all simultaneously to ultimately create the next Captain America. And I think that's what was so powerful about this whole entire series. And it was done perfectly. Like, that was the one thing, is looking at that series, I can't really find anywhere where there's a hole that needs to be filled or something in the storyline where I'm like, oh, you missed this or you missed that. Other than, I think you and I talked about it, where we just wanted more and we wanted to see more things played out. And I think the one thing I personally wanted to see more play out was Isaiah Bradley's storyline to actually be visually played out a little bit more, to see him, you know, wield that shield, to see the original actually World War II shield being carried as a mantle by him, or in the museum actually having him have that shield
with his
suit on, not him being in army fatigues, which was kind of strange. But even that was such a minor detail in the greater scheme of the whole entire storyline that I can't really fault it, and that's why
for me that was the only weak thing, was that missed opportunity where they should have put Isaiah in his Captain America suit with the shield. Right,
because the whole entire thing of that museum, I think it was in the Smithsonian, right? It was supposed to be a Smithsonian display
of all things Captain America.
Captain America, and then he put him in army fatigues. It's just like, that was kind of interesting.
You kind of missed the mark.
Plus, I think that would have been such an important thing to see, especially right now with Shang-Chi and seeing a black Captain America for the first time on such a grand scheme, on such a big platform. That would have been important just to see the original as well, and seeing the juxtaposition of Steve carrying that original shield, but also seeing Isaiah, for people who aren't familiar with the original comic book run, and seeing that play out. So that probably is the only thing, and that to me is not much when you start looking at it.
In the grand scheme of things.
So also the gravity and the tone, I think, of that series was just so serious, and it kind of had that same tone as to my all-time favorite MCU film, which was Cap 2. It just felt real. And when
it was
films,
grounded.
It was grounded, right? And when films or series have that tone, and it's still a comic book series, it just hits differently, right? And I think that's why I had to put that one at number one. It was a grounded story that could literally take place right now, and you're like, oh, that literally could happen, and I could see this play out, and these are all characters that are realistic. Granted, I know he was flying around with, Wakandan tech, but we're not going to overlook that too much.
Somebody came to me and they was like, well, what do you think of, his suit and his wings? Do you think his suit was bulletproof? I was like, I honestly thought, I would have loved to see Carly shoot him and the bullet hit his suit and drop on the ground. Right? Because the Wakandans have found a way to weave vibranium into their costumes. So I would have loved to seen that, but we didn't get that. I felt like because Sam had just gotten his new suit, even though he was pretty savvy with his wings, the next time we see him, he'll be way better with his wings. Because as much things as his wings is now doing, right? I felt like his wings responded like shadow physics, right? So all he have to do is think about what he wants it to do. Like, for instance, he saves the guy out of the helicopter, and he comes down, and he realizes the helicopter is coming down. He holds up the shield, and his wings automatically encases and wraps around. He creates that vibranium dome. And I remember pausing and taking a photo of that exact, what it looked like, right? And you see the shield, and then the colors of the wings, which is the American colors with the star to the very top of it. And I was like, Malcolm, what is his name? Can't remember his last name, the director for Falcon and Winter Soldier. I said he did an amazing job with just that scene where he saves the day, he comes down, boom, people clapping, whatever, he takes off, flies back up, right? The one guy's like, hey, that's Black Falcon. He's like, no, that's Captain America. It's in the midst of him saving the day, he's literally becoming Captain America. There was also elements of this show that was amazing. We got to see the Dora Milaje do what the Dora Milaje do.
When they came in, my God.
And they broke the fake Captain America. They broke him.
He never had a chance.
He didn't have a chance. You literally saw in his face that he was broken, and he said they weren't even super soldiers.
Yeah.
And that, I was like, I was all in my feelings. Now, as such a big lover of Black Panther, you know, I have watched Dora Milaje do these things, right? Fight a certain way, work as this unit, right? And I saw that on television. And I was like, oh my gosh. We got to see Zemo come back, right?
In a whole different light, too,
yes.
Right? Which was great.
But here's the thing. What I loved about Zemo in this show was there was so much elements and moving pieces that Zemo had in place. Even down to the last set of super soldiers that got killed. Zemo Butler was the one who executed that plan, right? And him and Zemo had already talked. Zemo was in jail at that point, right? But we heard in the end, and I think you and I talked about this, or I might have talked about this on a podcast with Katano and Reese. I said, I believe there is a Da Vinci always had a wingman, right? I forgot what his wingman was called, but it was two of them, right? And the book that Zemo is reading in the prison, the first time when Bucky goes in to see him is the book, right? And I remember saying in a podcast, I said, I bet you Zemo was working with someone. And it turned out that Zemo was actually working with Valentina because she says it. She's like, I guess Zemo was right all along. And you're like, that was the person who she was working with
at the time. And you got to see his comic book costume too.
You got to finally see it, you know.
And they did a good job with it too.
That whole scene in Madripoor.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Oh, yes.
Oh my gosh. When they walking through, you see the what is it called? The bar that Wolverine used to hang out in all the time. Was it a Princess Bar?
My gosh.
The bar in Madripoor, man.
Yeah.
I think it's the Princess Bar.
Princess. Now we're on the spot and
can't think of what it is, right? But we got to see the bronze monkey and all of that, right? All of that stuff is in the comics over in Madripoor, right? So we get to see what Madripoor looks like, and the operation of it, right? And it's like it's a crime-infested place. That crime is how how the economy thing works over there in Madripoor,
right?
You know, and it was just great seeing that now. Sam have to go in there and pretend to be someone else, right? Bucky have to revert back to the Winter Soldier.
Yep.
So Zemo is like, yo, stick to your role. And he says, get ready, Winter Soldier. And dude puts his hand on him, and he says what he says, and Winter Soldier just goes in. And you hear the screech. The same screech that you hear in the first Captain America movie where he falls off the train.
Yep.
The same screech you hear in the very end, right? Where Bucky falls off the thing when he goes over the top and he comes down, and the guy comes down and he puts up his hand and blocks it, right? You hear all these little things and you see all these little nods where you see Captain America and you're watching how little things is passing on to the next Captain America.
And we've been focusing a lot on Captain America, and we didn't even touch on Bucky.
Not yet.
Which is crazy, right? Like,
because he went through his own journey.
That's how good this series was. And we didn't even touch on how amazing the storyline that we got with Bucky, right? Yeah. Like, to see the struggle that he's had to go through and the recovery that he's had to go through. And make amends. And just to see him to try to assimilate into normal society and just see what he's trying to do to try to fix what his mental struggle is on a daily basis. And man, how rough was that when you put everything together and seeing that his daily stop where he's going in and visiting who he's visiting are people he's daily affected in his life and were targets at one point, and you're just like, oh my god, like to be able to just function is insane on a daily level. To be Bucky, like, wow.
There were moments where Sam and him would hold each other up, right? But they would check them. They would check the other one to give them like that rude awakening that they needed.
Yeah.
And the last conversation that they had, Sam said to Bucky, do the work. Yep. Crawl out of the trench.
Yeah.
You're going to have to get dirty, but you got to do the work. And after they say goodbye for that moment, you watch Sam put in the work.
Mm-hmm.
You watch Bucky went back and put in the work.
And you know what's interesting, too, is you could almost see how each of them needed Steve and how each of them filled the role of not having Steve for each other, right? Yeah. And that was also really interesting to watch because you know each of them didn't have Steve anymore.
They didn't.
And they had to get through this whole entire new situation in this new world without Steve.
Sam says it. He said, Steve is gone.
Yeah. Right? So, again, it's crazy how much was put into such a short amount of episodes.
Yeah.
But of the series, because we're ranking them, that's why this one ranks so high. And it's just so well done.
I was overwhelmed with feelings in the episode where it started off with them fighting Walker and taking the shield.
Yeah.
Right? And the two of Captain America's best friends now have to take down this guy who's defaming their friend.
Yeah.
And his legacy.
Yeah.
And it's minutes after he just commits murder.
Yeah.
Right? And
holding the one thing that represents what's left
of Steve.
Steve, right?
And there's a moment where when they win, right, and they got the shield back, Bucky walks over to Sam and he drops it in front of Sam. And he gives him that look like, Steve gave you this, you give it away, and this is what happened to it. I'm putting it back in your hand. Do not screw it up again this time, right? And you see Sam got his suit damaged, and he gets up, and he's wiping the blood off as if you tarnish my friend.
Right.
And you watching that struggle. Like, I went back and watched that. I was like, wow. Like, you watch him as he's wiping the blood off the shield. You know, like,
and
I have to clean this up.
How up until that point, how many times have you seen blood on the shield?
Yeah.
Granted, in the comics, you see it every now and then, right? But in the MCU, when have you seen blood on Cap's shield?
Never.
Right? And to see that contrast on that shield, it was a lot to see, right? And like the episode ends that way, and you're just like, oh,
yeah.
And to your that was rough to see, and that moment was a heavy moment, and I think that kind of just was like, oh wow, I have to do something about this, right?
They were not afraid of making you uncomfortable, right? Even down to the race topic and what they did to Isaiah.
Yeah.
You know, and he's like, no self-respecting black man who want to be Captain America. We need to be no poster, blonde hair, blue eye. And then you hear Sam in the speech that he's giving him, right? And he was like, don't you think that I feel the judgment? I feel the stares now? But I'm standing here, man. Just save the day. No blonde hair, no blue eyes.
Yeah.
I'm here. Just me.
Yeah.
Right? And it's in that moment, they do a flash to Isaiah's face. Because Isaiah is feeling it, right? His grandson is watching his father be emotional. The world is watching Sam on the television check the government. And it's like, we even got hit with the Lamar getting killed, right? And Harley's like, well, I wasn't worrying about him because he didn't matter to my thing, my cause. And even though fake Captain America has been so cruddy up until the moment, he says, you don't think that his life mattered, right? And it even though they didn't say it out loud, it's like black lives do matter, man. Right? And they were not afraid to ruffle people's feathers and say, listen, this is something that's going on in the climate of America.
Right.
You know, and man, it struck at so many chords and hit so many feelings, and oh man, it was just beautifully executed. Yeah. And that why I give him my number one.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. And then to finish off and to leave what it set up possibly.
Yeah.
I mean, Thunderbolts, right? Like,
Thunderbolts or Dark Avengers.
Or Dark Avengers. Either way.
A.P.A.C.